what it is. Rapid arenas today. +5 time control. Refresh our club page. Hey Benedict, hey Maddie. Oh wait, let's turn the mic in the right direction. That might improve sound quality a little bit. All right, yeah, Kostya's got a tournament starting today. Howdy Skibix, howdy Richard. Get the link to the club. Throw it up on YouTube. Well, Kostya's got himself an interesting position over here. Where's our window? Here we go. Let's put this here. So Kostya's playing a 9-round tournament. Today's round 1. I'm going to be covering rounds Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday this coming week. So we'll see how that goes. Welcome to the tournament, Synthetic Rain. Hope you're doing well today. See if I can put this board down here in the corner. This is Kostya's game. Put it down here for a moment. And maybe get rid of our info for a moment. Just throw a little Kostya on. All right, folks. I'll be back in 2 minutes. So I'll just leave this running for a moment. All right. ¿Cómo están, mi gente? Are we ready to play? Tournaments are starting in 10 minutes. So sign up for the Chess Dojo Rapid tournaments for this weekend. Let me check the 1700 plus arena. And announcement to Gimme My Money and Joshua Major Jr. You're in the wrong sections. I think you're probably pretty new, so I'm happy to try and direct you properly. You are in the 1700 plus group. There are 3 different groups. There's a 13 to 1700, a 1700 plus, and an under 1300. So I strongly advise you to find your way to the under 1300 group. Let me grab a link for that and put it in both chats in case you're out there listening. Copy the link to the under 1300 arena. That's where you'll face opponents with similar ratings to yourselves. I'll try and put the links in both of these chat rooms. And yeah, you'll need to leave the 1700 plus one to join those, because the 1700 plus is going to be tough, and it's usually a bunch of experts and masters, some A players. It's really, really vicious up there. Hi, Cross. How are your kids doing? Morning, gefilte fish. Does anyone know how Kostya is doing? My guess would be plus equal. Small advantage for white. Where do you live, TG? India. Oh, shoot. That's, yeah, terrible. Terrible. I saw that news this week and I was really shocked. Maybe Kostya plans a long knight maneuver to c5, but black will trade it when it gets there. Maybe he'll play f4, f5 at the last moment, and then when that knight leaves, play knight c5, bring his knight to b3. Yeah, totally gefilte fish. Thanks for checking out a show with a bad sounding title, I guess. Hi, Lock Carlos. How are you? Jesse's wanted to do that podcast episode for a long time, and I wasn't sure, like, how good it was going to be as an episode. But it seemed to turn out really well. We've gotten, some of our, let's say, better than average comments on it in the YouTube comments, at least, as far as people saying that it was interesting or useful. So Jesse was right about that. Yeah, sometimes it is hard to know gefilte fish, even like what's going on in our own heads, right? But if we think about it, sometimes we can figure out and understand more about it than we do without thinking about it, right? Like it's a tricky thing, but it's not necessarily a thing that we can never get any further at. Your friends in IM like us? Cool. All right, so one more announcement. Joshua Major Jr., 2008, and Gimme My Money Too. There is an under 1300 arena which needs 2 more players, and you two are both under 1300. You could join that arena. You could make it a tournament. DG Chess is waiting for you there. I do have dreams, man, with Head of Dog. Only if I get more sleep than normal. So sometimes, since I've had kids, there have been times where I went like years without any dreams because of just being awake too much. But if I'm well enough rested, I do have dreams, yes. And every now and then, even though I have kids, every now and then I've got a streak of like a week or so where I somehow get to sleep a bunch, and then dreams start happening again. Yeah. Hey, Flashlight. All right, folks, so the main event today, in theory, is 3 different arenas, rapid chess, open for all of you to play in. So, but those will only happen if folks join in the next 4 minutes. So, I'll just keep droning on with my little announcement. Okay. Yeah, when I was younger, I had dreams where I played in chess tournaments in my dreams, and once I woke up having played an entire 6-round tournament in one night. I don't know how it happened, time must have been slightly compressed within it. Maybe it skipped over some of the thinking, but it felt like I'd sat at the board through 6 games, and you're thinking, and my opponent's thinking, and looking at the board, and calculating something, and the ups and downs of your position's better, your position's worse, you win a game, you lose the game, all like the whole thing. And 6 games that I could pretty much have played out for you that day, the day after the dream. But yeah, I feel like, and this is a really weird thing, man, with Head of Dog, I feel like my dreams are visual, unlike any of my other thoughts when I'm awake. No, Ninja, I just wanted to play another one. I just wanted to play another one. Okay, we got a couple people coming into the 13-1700 group, so that tournament looks like it's in good shape. The 13 to 1700s are going to get to play today at least. Let's check on our dear friends, the under 1300s. Lots of love to our under 1300 friends. All right, Sully and Hermats have joined them, and they've got a group. Or there's always multiple perspectives on things, Kostya's Flashlight, right? And from another perspective, I should not go for GM because I already spent several years playing chess and enjoyed it, and now there's other things to do in life and other people who should get a turn to just roam around the world playing a game for fun. All right, we got enough players in all sections now. So it's the last time I'm going to warn these guys. I don't know how to help them out, but Gimme My Money Too. The opponents in your section are 2,000 points higher rated than you, and Joshua Major, the people in this group are 1,000 points higher rated than you. So there are more appropriate rating sections for you where you will have much closer games. It's split up like this on purpose because when you play with people close to you in rating, you don't know if you're going to win or lose. The whole game has all this suspense to it. Your name, your new Twitch name comes from Kostya's visualization of the chessboard. Yeah. Okay, well, I've warned you guys as much as I could, Joshua Major, and give me my money. Maybe next week you'll find your way to the right group. Hey, Kaholi. Let me see. The under 1,300 section may have some people around your rating. You're 500. Let me have a quick look, okay? In general, it's going to pair you against the people in your section who are the closest to you in rating. So you only need a couple people close to you in rating. You don't need everyone to have the same rating as you. But yeah, everybody's 900 in that group today. So it could be tough today. I understand. Yeah. If only Give Me My Money were as sensitive to that as you. That would be a good opponent for you. But they're in the over 1,700 section with their 200 rating. Yeah, keep checking in. I mean, in this under 1,300 section, Kaholi, we often have a bunch of players rated 300 to 700. It's just that today, at this moment, we don't. But they might come in, in 10 minutes or in half an hour because it's a 3-hour arena. And the pairing logic on the tournament is it pairs you with the person closest in rating to you who's available for a game at the same time as you. So, by the way, folks, games are starting. So for those of you who are in the tournaments, note that your board might have started, play your first move and all that. Enjoy your games. We wish you all great games and fun and so forth. But yeah, Kaholi, I think you can click on the tournament without joining it because there's like a green join button once you're in the tournament. So even over here, you can click the join button and it won't join you into the tournament, or you can click on the link and then you can see the tournament. And if you see some low rated players enter the tournament, then you could join yourself once you see them there. Hi, Bihan. Let's open up a game, shall we? I mean, if we're here, let's see. Hermats and DG Chess. Playing over here, Ugly Yenis against Synthetic Rain. Also, a very proper-looking Queen's Gambit to start off their game. White aims it towards a Catalan, while Black plays a Semi-Slav. And the other game that I had open there was White's playing a Queen's Gambit and Black's playing, I think they might call it sometimes like a Schlechter Slav when you mix the Grunfeld defense and the Slav defense. Might sometimes be named for Schlechter, who was a world championship challenger against Emanuel Lasker in 1910, tied the match. And Lasker retained the title. So, yeah, solid, proper openings from both of our early under 1,300 boards here. White's putting pressure on the center and developing pieces towards the center on both boards, and Black is, establishing a space in the center for their pieces and developing as well. So far, really clean play from White and Black on both of these boards. Oh, interesting choice here from Ugly Yenis. The bishop could already come out, and they make a slightly controversial choice to put it on the long diagonal at the cost of one extra pawn move. I have seen actually even GMs play like this, even though it seems a little bit peculiar. Hey, Nemtomi. Yeah, what is Schlechter's first name? I think it's Carl Schlechter, the chess player. Who had the worst score for Lega Filterfish in that same year, 1910? In that same year of 1910, the worst score ever in a world championship match was achieved by David Yanowski. Lasker, who'd been sort of, on and off avoiding challengers, played 2 world championship matches in the same year, which goes against the grain of the normal narrative we have about him, right? So, like almost everything in the world, probably the real story of Lasker is far more complicated than what most of us walk around with in our heads. Look at them thinking, too. The lower rated dojoers are playing good, solid opening moves and thinking about those moves. Maybe there's a correlation between thinking about the moves and playing good moves. Who knows? Kostya's knight headed over to the king side. Interesting. Potentially it could be strong on f5, attacking this pawn, going in here. That would be weird. Or you could try and chase the king back. If you could set up the bishop on this diagonal at some point, that might tie black down in terms of this pawn. Bringing the knight to e5 also looks tremendous, if possible. Hey, Nemtomi, you've made a draw with another 1600. Is it possible that you both made no mistakes for an entire game in a King's Indian defense? It's possible, right? It's a little bit rare at a 1600 level to have an entire game with no mistakes for either player, but it's not impossible. I've seen 1600s play several good moves in a row. I can't remember offhand seeing a recent game between 1600s with 0 mistakes. He might not have. You couldn't find any. Okay, cool. All right, rook e1. So white's thinking about maybe playing e4. It's slightly weird that white hasn't yet picked a square for this knight. That's the only thing weird about this position. Especially this move is kind of saying you want to play e4, but there's no way you're playing e4 without bringing out this knight. So I would have really expected knight c3 from white in the last move or two. Now black challenges e5, and we're going to have to see, does white intend to just hold the square or not? If you went to e5, normally you'd be planning to hold that square. Oh, that's an interesting idea on the Kostya board. This comes from Tactics and Swindles. And they're saying a concept for Kostya for this position could be doubling rooks on the c-file and then playing rook takes c6, sacking in exchange, and specifically trading a rook for black's worst piece. Because in the resulting position, d5 and a6 will be so weak. And I have to say that is conceivable. Now that you mention it, that is conceivable. There comes Synthetic's knight to the square. We expected it. Putting a little pressure on d5, but black's got d5 really, really well covered. The big idea is going to be e4 for white. And the big calculation is, should black trade on e5 right now or not? That's kind of the question that should be most on the minds of these two players. Here's a first variation I will show you all. This is kind of like a first critical concept. Knight g4 attacking the pawn twice. So the only way to defend it when it's attacked twice is to play f4. And then queen b6 check. This is why I put the knight on g4 instead of d7. This could sometimes win the game immediately, right? And white would regret hanging onto the e-pawn. However, because white's played rook e1, it looks like they could actually play e3 here, right? And now they just have to play h3, chase the knight back to h6, and they'll be able to hold this whole central construction together. So, very interesting variation to try to calculate, and I think that in a rapid game, it's going to be very hard for the players to get too deep into this line and figure out if it's good for white or black. They're going to kind of get the sense that white could play f4, and then they're going to have to go on instinct, whether black thinks they've got enough tactical juice to bring the knight forward or not. But they're not going to be able to calculate the whole thing. Central constructions. 'You've lost files on Kostya's board? Sorry. My boards are kind of overlapping with each other, I guess. When I move on one board. Yeah, thank you for telling me. Knight e4. Very confusing move. Now there's so many captures to calculate. It's tough on both players. Knight e4 from Ugly Genis. This knight has put itself in a position where it could be lost, right? But, well, I mean, where a pawn could be lost. But this knight is also where a pawn could be lost. There's a million possible moves now, right? There's knight takes d7. There's knight takes e4. Oh, man. The players are confused. The audience is confused. Even the IM's just going to say, well, we'll just see what happens. We're not going to try and calculate it all. Knight e4. d4. All right. Now I'll give you a couple variations, folks. If bishop e4, knight e5, d e5, bishop e5, material is equal. Ooh, genius, right? Material is equal. Positions may be a little bit better for white because the black bishop on c8 remains bad. Other variation, knight d7, queen d7, bishop e4, queen d4. Again, materials equal. Again, white is just a tiny bit better because of the bishop on c8. So my guess is that this knight e4 move from black is not going to lose a pawn in all these crazy captures. We're going to come out with equal material and a small advantage for white based on this bishop c8. We'll see how these players handle that. Cool. Okay, Kostya's brought the knight up. So one rook to c1. Rook d8. I have no idea why the rook went to d8. Whoa, that messes up the board. And then knight f5. So first idea is knight takes pawn. And there may be all kinds of other ideas, you know, because Kostya is a very strong player and he's spending a bunch of time on his moves. An obvious move for black might be h5, and then if Kostya just went back to g3, that's kind of annoying for black. Yeah, if this knight could be on e5, whew, that would be the dream in this on this board. But at the moment, it doesn't have any obvious route to get there, right? It's not clearly in striking distance or anything. Oh yeah, somebody's saying you could calculate knight f4 for black here, right? Rook g6 was just played. Should we do a little exercise? Knight f4, attacking the bishop. Pawn takes, bishop takes, rook check, and devastation is rained upon black, right? So it looks like Kostya checked that successfully. And black chooses fairly risky looking move, rook g6. It defends the pawn and avoids h5, but it lines up the rook with this bishop, right? So now any move Kostya plays with his knight is coming with a tempo now. There's also the idea of h5, and then if the rook moves, knight takes h6. Let me just follow a basic variation for a second, folks. Here, 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 here. And white doesn't break through. Okay. So rook g6 doesn't just straightforwardly lose to that. As one would expect of somebody playing a classical game, normally they're not going to just straightforwardly lose to the most obvious sequence of moves. Let's get an update on our other board. Knight e5, d5, bishop e5. And a very risky move, f4. That's not really the purpose of white's position to my eyes. But we also had a question about this position from Stamen, saying instead of knight e4, could black have played c5? You're trying to undermine this knight, huh? Yeah, it looks playable, Stamen. It looks playable. I don't know if it's, the number one move, but it's definitely a candidate, yeah? F4. So as white, I would want to play something like bishop h6 or bishop e3 here. That's my instinct, developing the rook. And I'd be worried about b2. So I might look at queen c2 or queen b3, but only if I found something wrong with bishop h6 first, right? So the first thing I would do here is I would calculate bishop h6, bishop b2. Then I notice that after bishop takes, they can't take my rook because the queen's undefended. And if they trade queens, I can save my rook. So I think I could go bishop h6, and if my opponent plays bishop g7, I'll just trade, and I might just keep trading. Take over the open file. Yeah, that looks good to me. Trying to lock away these pieces, and eventually if I could walk the white king into g5 and then maybe h6, g7, I imagine there's a million ways to eventually win this position. Now as white, you don't need to look for a win in this position here. You just look for something that looks, pleasant or promising or problems for your opponent, right? And this seems to fit the bill to me. Now f4, bishop just drops back, and is it good for white to have the pawn here? To me, it just blocks in this bishop. I don't see it's like a position where we want to rush pawns. I see it as a position where this is black's main problem, and the d file is the most valuable asset on the board, the most valuable real estate for white or black. And so we want to try and dominate the d file as much as we can by bringing this rook into the game before this one, and keep the bishop on c8 from finding a good way to get out. To me, those are Those are the strategic currents of the game. All right, black throws a check. Could potentially play rook d8 here to fight for this file nicely. But looks for a more skirmishy move with e5. White takes over the file now. Okay. But this bishop can get out now, and white's king has been loosened by g3 and f4 and e3. That's a lot of pawn moves on this side of the board. So if black gets the bishop out and gets the rook out, they're actually suddenly going to be way ahead because white never developed these pieces. Who would have thought at this point here that this bishop would have more trouble getting out than this bishop, huh? Black's e5 move must be a really good move now that I'm thinking about it, right? e5. Letting this piece out. Yeah. Okay, black plays a trade, which is a good move because white has to take with this pawn, breaking up their pawn structure in a bad way. I do really want this bishop to come out, but I love this move as well. White takes back. So now, any move of the c8 bishop, I'm going to give you credit for, Ugly Genis, other than bishop d7, where white can take it, and bishop f5, where white can take it. So if you play any of these three moves, I will be proud of you. The best is probably going to be bishop g4 because it's a tempo on the rook, right? That's got to be the best of the three. But yeah, any of them are possible. Oh, bishop g4. It's getting ugly. Black plays a lovely move. And next thing, they're going to take over the d file, and white's still not getting these pieces out. And the king has been weakened. So this could turn really horrific for white in a hurry. Here, this game could get really bad. The mix of black getting ahead in development and white's king being weak. That is a recipe for violence. And I feel like these pieces are maybe going to give black tempi to bring both rooks out. You see what I mean? Like Far Eastern, imagine this rook moves away from the bishop, right? Like rook e1, rook f1, something like that, right? Rook d2 was just played in the game. Potentially black could kick the queen, right? She heads over to cover the king, and then kick the bishop as well. So these pieces just come out super, super fast. White played rook d2, which stays on the file, but it does get in the way of this bishop. Now, what do we do as black here? One option is you go rook d8, you trade that rook, and when they recapture, you win a pawn. But the rook's also blocking the defense of e3. My instinct is to go rook e8 now and go after these two squares. Because the rook is really not great on d2. It feels weird to go trade it. But I did want to take over the d file. You know, trade the rook, bring my second rook, take over while this is here. Both are very tempting. Black goes for rook d8. White looks for a queen trade. That would relieve the pressure. Big time. Big time. Black should not trade that queen. Unless I'm missing something. But unless I'm missing something, that queen should not be traded. It would basically save white. Oh, black's playing a move. They kept the queens on. What a great guy you are, Ugly Yenis. I love it. Now, I calculated the most direct move, even though it's against all my instincts, right? And strangely, what I found was that black is still better, even after allowing the queen trade and the rook trade. This piece is hanging, and this pawn is hanging. And if you come here, trade, trade, rook into the second rank, I was thinking this looks quite bad for white. But now that I put it on the board, despite the horrible pawn structure, black's pawns will die just as fast. So actually, yeah, that would give up a lot of black's advantage. It looks nice for black, but white's got fair drawing chances. God, I just have to know. All right, so it keeps the queens on. Rook g2. Okay. Tempting to get in here, but black has to be careful. You could get overexposed, right? You put your rook in, and then your bishop's still getting attacked. But definitely it's a dream to get into the first row. Ooh, black plays a flashy, dynamic move, counterattacking while leaving this hanging. That's some impressive stuff as well, to even think in that way. To think in terms of counterattacks like that. Yeah, very dynamic. I would guess that white's going to play rook g4, rook e4, and make the bishop trade, but don't know for sure. Okay, we got a move. It was queen c2. Defending that bishop with the queen. Gives me a bad feeling. Maybe bishop d1, tucking the queen into b1 to keep that defended. It doesn't, so to speak, win immediately, but what do you think? Queen on b1 looks pretty bad, doesn't it? Hey, congrats, DG. Too bad I didn't see more of it. Oh, wow, what a finish at the end. Nice, queen h3. Oh, la la. Wow, intense game. Looks like here the game was still complicated until basically the last move, until they let your bishop into f4. I feel like until this moment we couldn't tell who's better for sure. You've got some attacking chances against white's king, but white's got a lot of space in the center, and these two pieces aren't getting to the game yet. So looks still pretty complicated if they defend the pawn. Maybe something like this could be best, like takes, queen here. Oh no, that drops the pawn, huh? You trade the queen and win a pawn like this, and now you've got 2 extra pawns in the endgame. That's pretty good for you. Maybe white just has to play an ugly move like this, just defending it. Yeah, I was wondering about that as well first night. I just didn't want to get into anything too... I didn't want to get into a line that was too tactical and tricky. Yeah. I'm sorry to have disturbed you by leaving that out. So queen e2, bishop f4, and takes it. Okay, back to over here. So we had queen c2, bishop d1. Nice move, Yenis, and white drops the bishop. That bishop's almost trapped on d1, oddly, but it escapes. Yes, I agree first night. I understand. Wow. Powerful game from Yenis. Ever since they played e5, they just brought all the pieces to bear. Good stuff. Like different shows, gefilte fish? Or episodes of the podcast? You mean things like new game shows or just topics for the podcast? For the podcast, we've got a list of maybe 10 to 20 topics waiting in the wings. Yeah, so for Dojo Talks, yeah, we've got another 10 or 20 episode ideas that we've been waiting on doing. Some of them we may never do because one of us might not want to do it. You know? Like an example, I wanted to do a show in January, just like who's the hottest chess player in the world right now, like, you know, who's on fire or whatever, right? Who's the best player as we get into this year. You know, it would just be like a chance to talk about a few recent top tournaments and who's doing well or badly in them, right? But Jesse just was like, nah. And then sometimes if one of us just says nah, yeah, Far Eastern, I wasn't going to talk about like who's got nice pants or how their pants look on them or something like that. Just hottest, like, you know, who's in the best form. Like, to some extent, you know, Magnus is probably the best player in the world, right? So it's kind of like who's on the hottest streak, right? Like last year, Aragaisi had a great streak. You know, this year, Prague started the year off by winning the Chorus Wake on Zay tournament, you know, that kind of thing. So, all right. Yeah, white drops the queen, and that's the end of the game. Let's see what other games are going now over here. Or actually, let's go to one of the other sections and check out a game, right? Yeah, that's what we normally do. We rotate around. So let's go to the 13 to 1700 crew. See a game of theirs. Do I agree with Danny Wrench's comment that Gukesh is not in the top 5 classical players right now? All right, we got a fair-looking endgame here between Emergens and Baymon. That definitely looks interesting to me. And then we've got Tim against Lacrolos. White's up in exchange, but has to be very careful with the king. Trying to break through and end the game. And Lacrolos only has seconds to handle this position. Maybe White's about to break through on this one. Technically, Gukesh is rated number 5. I thought Gukesh was number 3 on the rating lists. On 2700chess.com, for example. Oh, he just lost a game today, huh? And dropped from number 3 to number 5. Oof. I hadn't seen today's game. Yesterday he was number 3. Today he's number 5. Do I think he's in the top 5? For sure. Yeah. In fact, I think Gukesh is in the top 3 in classical chess right now. MVL played great yesterday, didn't he? He played more or less a perfect game against Wesley So, a technical game. An endgame with a pawn up, but knight against bishop, and his pawn wasn't very good at first. Tim's cleaning this one up nicely. Let's go to that endgame between Emergence and Baymon. Yeah, queen g6, forcing a queen trade, and then this endgame's a mop-up. So let's go over here. We got bishop against knight. Black's got a pawn majority. White's got a pawn majority, but look what Black did in the last 3 moves, folks. This is really impressive. Look at this. G5, H5, G4, activating that pawn majority, right? And now the knight maneuvers. Gukesh does push too much, Skibix, but that's part of he's trying to, push himself, right? And learn and maximize for the future. He could rein that in if he wanted to, I think. And he can rein that in at some point if he wants to, or he can or he might successfully push himself to be so much better than everyone else that he can get away with it. But I would think the best player in classical chess right now would be Magnus. And then I would think that for who else is in the top 3, I would say it's kind of between Erigaisi and Gukesh, honestly. I think they're a step ahead of Naka and Fabi right now. And Abdusattorov maybe competing for top 3. And then we have to keep our eyes on Prague, right? Because he won Chorus. He's young. He's talented. He's playing well so far here in Romania. But he hasn't yet shown consistently that he'd be in the top 5 in the world yet. But if he has another good result here, maybe he'll be in the top 5 for the next 10 years. Okay, so what happened here to Black's extra H pawn? While I was thinking about your guys' questions. B5. Black switches to playing on the wrong side of the board here at the wrong time. Drops that pawn. Goodness. This pawn should have just kept going, I know it looks like it's blocked, but you get it that close, and then you can play various breakthroughs to get through. So this pawn should have gone. I've only seen 3 rounds of Super Bet. A 4th round was played today. I guess probably MVL might be in first place right now. And definitely his game against Wesley won yesterday was fantastic. Somebody in chat saying his game against Gukesh today was fantastic as well, which is sort of what I would expect to win a game against Gukesh. All right, Black fights against White's pawn. White pushes it. Nice, looking for rook d6. We trade into a rook ending, which looks great for White. That's going to get chased away. Just kick him away, Emergence. Kick him to the curb. Nice, nice. Active rook. Beautiful, Emergence. Keep going. Or get behind that pawn. Maybe get behind that pawn. Man, just seconds for each player here, plus a 5-second increment. Very tricky to play this. That's not important enough. Black goes after this. I think you have to retreat. If you go here, there's f4, and you're just kind of trading pawns and not making much progress. I guess you could keep your rook on the pawn. It could work out. Oh, because MVL lost in the first round, huh, Head of Dog? Oh, surprise, the king doesn't take on e3. White trades pawns. I think rook h5 was more sane because this passed pawn is too strong. Ay, ay, ay. Ah, the good news, Synthetic Rain, is we watched almost your whole game. So you can watch the recording later. Or I think on YouTube, it's pretty easy to just click backwards on the stream, right? Just drag the thing back on the stream, and you can watch our commentary on your game. We saw it all. So, yeah, I do have advice for you. Man, that's rough. White ran out of time here. Definitely a possibility. Of course, white shouldn't ever lose this endgame, right? White's up a pawn, so they should always be able to make a draw here if they move back and forth quickly. Yeah, gefilte fish. I'd be happy to do that. Let me just say the critical little rook and pawn ending idea from this one here, I think, is this pawn is not equal to this pawn because this one provides so much counterplay. So I think here, very important for white would have been rook h5 defending that h pawn, keeping from black from getting an advanced passed pawn. And that keeps really good chances to win this endgame for white. Oh, look at that. You've got your opponent there. So you guys could talk together about the game and share your thoughts and ideas. But also, if you click back in the YouTube thing, you can watch all the commentary on the game and see what I thought about it. Oh, Kostya's board's frozen? Yeah, let's update it. Kostya played knight g3. Rook retreated. Rook g1. Knight here stopping the knight from coming forward. And now the big advance of Kostya's e-pawn. Whoo! Kostya just grabbed a bunch of space. Black tries to blockade, but that f-pawn's weak too. And now Kostya takes the g-file from black. Oh my god, his advantage is growing and growing. And we've caught up with the live position on Kostya's board, I think. His advantage is massive now. Black can't contest the g-file because they got a knight stuck here to defend this pawn. And look at that space. Holy moly. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to open up another board and be right back, folks. I'll be right back. 1 second. Ow. Ay, ay, ay. Holy moly, geez Louise. Kostya's rook has been getting better and better, huh? Woo! This one comes in here. Then the knight can come back to g3. Oh, it's looking crispy. Tu veux nous joindre? No? Okay. Pas obligé. Oh, we got a knight on f5 over here for Entim. Threatening maybe knight g7. Black could castle. Knight f4 would be great if not for bishop takes queen. Komplikatsk. I mean, the obvious move is to castle, and it feels like you kind of have to. But 316 is smelling that this is an intense moment, so they're making sure that castling is okay. If castling is bad tactically, then they're going to want to do something unusual to avoid the position cracking. For example, maybe g5 or bishop g6 might be playable moves if in a pinch. I don't see what the advantage would be if king f8 over castles, but first you look at castles and see if there's any problem, right? So castles, bishop f6, and you're saying gf6 is forced? Why not bishop f6? Castles, bishop f6, bishop f6. Okay, 316 goes for something intense. The non-standard, the big old g5. Queen d5? I think this idea would actually work against gf6. Maybe. Right? Against gf6, maybe it works more. Although even there's bishop takes e2, so you'd have to do g4 first. And then I don't know if queen d5 is our best move. It might just be knight h6, but queen d5 is an idea now. I guess queen d5 is pretty good here, yeah. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the fear was here for black. I mean, it looked scary, but I didn't see a specific continuation for white that was really hurting black. And I wouldn't have made that trade on e7 either. It feels like our knight is at least as good as this bishop, right? Plus, they can't castle because of knight h6 check. So I think we just drop back and believe in the power of our knight. But white trades it off and then retreats. So maybe another chance for black to get themselves castled. Obviously, a bit of a wound in the position, this g5 move here. That's a real idea, Fisher said. Yeah, let's have a look at that. So we go here, here. Oh, shoot. I think there's a problem with your idea too, Fisher said, maybe? Let's see. Knight e7, here, 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 here. The knight defends e7. Yeah. So, okay, we could make yet another trade here. And then get a pawn. And then plop a knight in the middle of the board, and yeah, white's pretty good, I guess, right? Extra pawn after all. And there might be better moves than knight f4, because actually we could maybe try and, immediately do something here. Okay, so that's pretty promising for white, actually. Direct g4, trade everything, win one pawn at least, and yeah, it looks pretty safe for white. Actually, that position. But okay, so we get here. Black gets castled. Hooray for them. White sinks into the weak square again. But notice how much time white's used. They're down to 4 minutes against 9, and they haven't yet won anything, right? They have a nice looking position. Black's feeling under pressure, but black's coming up with the moves not too slowly, and white hasn't yet connected with anything tactical, right? And they do have to sort out the queen and knight thing, because white's playing with like their pretty pieces, as Jesse would say, right? But the rook on f1, queen on d1, they're being ignored because it's tricky to figure out what to do about them. All right, awesome, Synthetic Rain. I'm glad you were able to, and I'm glad there was something useful in there for you. And yeah, of course, there was time management towards the end, apparently, and panic, which was pretty critical. But your opponent was starting to outplay you by that point, right? They'd brought out all their pieces, and they'd won the bishop on e4. So things were definitely going against you by the time you got into that time panic. To me, that you didn't get the bishop off of c1 and instead blocked it in with f4 and e3, that was the turning point in the game to me. If I were to sort of, look at the game in the really big picture view. When you play f4 and e3 and your bishop gets stuck on c1, then it becomes really hard to play the game. And if instead maybe you played queen c2, bishop e3, and put your rooks on the d file, the game might be quote-unquote easy to play, as we say. You know what I mean? Like, it's easier to play a position where all your pieces are on good squares, so to speak. Or that's what how a lot of chess players talk about it. Rook c6 is the move. Knight d4 sacking the queen is tempting here, but not very good, I guess. Rook e1. Okay, so white starts to deal with the problem. Defends the knight to free the queen. Qu'est-ce qui se passe? T'es blessé? Ok, j'arrive. Où es-tu? Où es-tu? Attraper sur quelque chose? Comme un meuble ou quoi? C'était sur un meuble ou quoi? Et en 10 ou 15 minutes, essaye d'enlever la glace et de voir si ça fait encore mal ou pas. Oui. Je laisse la porte ouverte, comme ça tu peux m'appeler plus facilement. Si tu as besoin. Just leave that. two. Okay, everything's okay. Everything's okay. So, 94. How's Kostya doing? Black traded a rook. Kostya's going to take that, isn't he? Let's see how Kostya's game ended. So, yeah, it's so annoying that it moves the view. Okay, so Kostya got a rook in. Second rook in. Black looks to trade one of them. Wait a minute. Knight here and Kostya can't just take this? I guess Black wants to play knight f6 with tempo and then lodge the knight somewhere. Sure, so Kostya prevents the knight from coming out. Sends that bishop to hell and wins this pawn. Takes it. Takes it. GG. The end. Fini the comédie. The comédie se finit. Yeah, rook c6 was a risky square to go to, Oscar Chess, but Black wanted to keep the knight defended, right? So if they play like rook here, then this knight is super loose. So I think that was their consideration, you know. Rook c6 also very dangerous because it's undefended, so now the knight can't move. Very, very risky. This was a tough choice for Black, and this is the move 316 thought on the longest in the game, was this choice. There wasn't a good choice, you know. They just had to calculate some moves and try and find a move that didn't lose. Huh, they come out pretty well with it now. Rook e1, knight e4. I think here maybe the clever move for White was to trade this bishop while the knight can't move, right? And keep those vulnerabilities for the opponent. And after pawn takes, maybe something like queen d5, right? Yeah. Oh, queen d5. Ay. That's killer. That's so killer that maybe we have to go queen d8 instead. And then for White, there's this very, very strong move. Just continuing to go after this thing on the C file that Oscar Chess was worried about. We're really trying to emphasize the tactical problem for Black here as White. But White retreated this bishop, and that gave Black the time they needed to untangle the rook. Back into f2. Sorry. The rook had to go back to f1 to defend the f2 pawn. And you can see White just using the 5-second increment on every move now. They're just out of time here. All right, Kostya's opponent grabs a pawn to keep the game going. King g2, that's weird. What does king g2 achieve? Oh, I guess he's trying to trap the rook with this at the end? No, I don't know what he's doing. Oh, bishop h3, perhaps? Yeah, okay, so that's a little trap for the rook. If it comes here, he's got bishop g2, so he can keep it trapped. And now he's going to play king g2. Okay, Kostya, we see you. Nice work. And Black wins our other game. Wow. turns the tide in white's time pressure, right? G4 takes, check, check, check. Oh, 6 seconds versus 6 minutes. Yeah. So the time pressure definitely became a bigger and bigger and bigger factor this game, despite white having a pleasant position. Nice game. Let's see who's in the lead so far in this tournament. 316 now in the lead, along with Tim F831. Congrats to both of them on a good start. 2-0. 1 hour into the arena. 2 more hours to go. Nordovic has joined and is playing over here against the Professor of Prophylaxis. And what is going on with this rook in black's face? Nordovic's not sure. He's got 5 minutes and he's thinking, where did the rook come from? How did it get there? Rook c6. Whoa. Normal would have been bishop takes, right? Rook c6. What's going on? It's very mysterious. All right, black looks to queen a pawn. My instinct would be pawn takes c5, so the passed pawn is close to your king and knight. Pawn takes c5, I could see there's some potential that that could actually go awry, right? But I guess the knight's only so slow. Still no problem. Ghost is thinking. His opponent's got a bunch of time left. And I'm going to go to the 1700 plus group, which we have not yet visited today, and find a game there. Okay, Nordovic took with pawn, keeping the extra exchange, and I don't see what the professor has in mind. Wow, domain exception has somehow gone 4 out of 4 in just 1 hour, playing super fast. We've got Mama Said Madam, Muxia, Travkuskin, Darmuse, Joe Yabu. A lot of people in the wrong section here, but okay, it's their choice. Let's see one of these games. Okay. This looks interesting. Joey Yabu with white against Muxia. First impression would be a small advantage for white based on this bishop on c6 not being very good with the sort of French pawn structure. It does look like a French defense, but it could have been something else, right? Is Aaron playing? I did not see Aaron in here, though often Aaron does play. I see domain exception in first place, followed by I really want checkmate, followed by Michelle Amy. Yeah, I don't see Aaron today. We're going to see where this game came from real quick. Okay, folks? French defense. Black takes en passant. That makes sense. Yeah, I like watching his games too, Oscar. Yeah, here I would have thought black would play bishop b5, but they played pawn b5, kind of locking that bishop in some more. And white goes for the dark square bishop trade, which is fine. But it also feels kind of undynamic to me. Like, this bishop's perfectly good here. It's overprotecting this. You know, make black come to you. You're so strong here. My instinct is to play h4, but I think black can take it. And then I think of like g3, h4. King g2 maybe, rook h1. You wouldn't want to be either player here, gefilte fish. Kostya's won his game. Looks like d takes c5 was the last move. Bravo, Kostya Kost. Good start. Good start to the tournament. Oops. I was thinking this move first, since black wants to play this, so I'll just prevent it. And then probably g3, h4 coming. I don't think black can play f6, because you can probably take on e6 with check. I'd be surprised if that's okay for black, even with the f file a little bit weakened. But we'll continue just following their game. Bishop c5, those trade. Knight comes in. Queen heads over. Black makes the pawn break. White's got one thing on their mind. And it's trying to make a pawn weakness for black over here. I would often throw in a move like rook c1 at some point, but maybe after b4, rook c1. Yeah, you were happy to just give it. Yeah, black's getting better. Filet, gefilte fish. This b4 pawn break was their plan. White hasn't achieved anything yet. And when white trades on b4, it's actually like the worst structured rule choice for white because of this. And white is completely winning, says Fisher7 anyway. Are you serious, Trav Kuskin? And to think I didn't click on the game. What was I thinking? I do like a short game myself. No! Yikes. So they're playing like a reverse Sicilian. Kind of like a, whatchamacallit? Taimanov, maybe? But without a3. So you go here, threatening knight d3. Which is not like a game-ending threat. But they panic about it. Sack a pawn for this very unlikely knight b5. Now you threaten knight c2. King d2? And you just overprotect this pawn. And you know that eventually the game will be yours with this king here. Yeah. Nice. I like this just bishop f5, bishop g6. Very, very calm from Tim. Right? Just saying like, you know, hey, as long as my pieces come out, as long as this king is here. h4. Okay. I mean, h5 looks fine for black, but it looks like Tim found something else. Knight e5, queen b7, rook b8. She has to go to a7. And now she's done going anywhere. Holy moly. The queen got trapped before the king could. And I guess against queen g3, you probably develop more pieces pretty happily. Wow. So here, Trav Kuskin calculated. You must have thought about knight e5 before playing it. 1 minute. Oh, it didn't take you that long. That's nice, quick calculation. It's true 1800 strength. This king d2 is the best possible relation to the knight on b4 at the moment, right? If this were an endgame, that would be a perfect move for the king. However, it's not only not an endgame, it's not yet the middle game, it's the opening. And the king is in bad relation to every single other piece on the board other than the knight on b4. Yeah, white tries some desperate, weird moves with the queen and the pawn, where normally you would try to bring out your pieces, but white knows that simple moves aren't going to be good enough, so they try and, mess with black, and that accelerates the defeat. So it goes. So it goes. Hello, says Chess Dojo. Oh, that must be Kostya, whose game we were just watching, right? The timing lines up. So that's going to be my guess. My guess is that that's Kostya. Confident it's not David. Yes, we liked your game. It looked very fun. I know I didn't put myself down to analyze your game today. It's because I thought that I was going to be with the kids this morning. I thought I would just get the chess tournament running so that people could join, but I didn't think I was going to be able to do the commentary this weekend. And then I was on, so I put your game on as well since I was here. Did you like your game? Let's keep this game going. So white plays queen h4. Black plays h6 in advance of knight g5. They could have also waited for knight g5 probably. White lifts a rook. Use some stuff you just learned in the camp. Oh, some stuff called positional play. I've heard of positional play, but what is it? And why did this knight just leave the king side? Oh, right, because white wants the rook on the king side. White's got one goal. Fischer Seb is in favor of white's position. Says white's basically winning. Knight g6 looks reasonable for black. Hitting the queen, who's defending the knight. Well, black just played knight g6. Hey, Chess Weeb. How's it going? Oscar Chess will now take black. All right, Fischer Seb says after knight d2, they're maybe going to rescind being on white's side here. What I've calculated, folks, is queen here, h5, queen h5, queen d4. That was my calculation. And yeah, white's position is spoiled. Unfortunately, this knight d2 seems to have dropped the ball. You're doing great? Oh, that's good to hear. I'm pretty good too. We're starting to look ahead towards the summer. It's only about 4 weeks away that I will be headed to Hawaii for 2 months. Kids will play on the beach. I will play on the beach. But with or without knight d2, I never really saw what white is doing here. You won again, DG. Congrats. Would you like to come play chess in Hawaii, Chess Weeb? There's nice beaches, but there's not a lot of people for me to play with there. We saw that dubious exchange sack, Nordovik. Yeah, we were there for that moment, and then pushing the H-pawn would have made sense for white, Fisher Seb is saying. And that's what I was thinking the whole time as white was kind of maneuvering these pieces around without a target. I thought running the H-pawn forward would maybe make some kind of an impression. Or it was like the idea that interested me. But yeah, long, long maneuvers with the queen. If we're going to trade that bishop, I mean, at least the reason should be to start doing this immediately. That said, black's going to continue their plan, and when you go h5, they're going to go h6. So you can't poke that square yet, and, you know, still a game to play. I think I might put my queen on c5 at this point. I don't know why. Just an instinct there. Okay, all this happened. Yeah, and black will win this game, so we're going to go find another game. Last seen playing Gunfire Reborn? You don't stream chess anymore? What on earth is Gunfire Reborn? What's happened to you? What's happened to you? Go around to this group here. All right, Ugly Yenis. We've already seen them play a great game earlier today. It looks like they're currently in first place in the arena, if I know how to read this stuff. Yeah, tied with DG Chess for first place. So we need to see a showdown at some point today between DG Chess and Ugly Yenis. Or the Gray Muse, also with 2 out of 2. Would be nice to see that matchup. Earlier today, there was a 500 here who didn't want to play because everyone was rated 900 at the time. And now there are players who would be well matched with them by rating. Kaholi. Kaholi. I don't know if you're still around, Kaholi, but in the end, there would have been plenty of good people for you to play with today. Oh, my browser's completely out of whack. So, Kaholi, in the end, there's a player rated 100 in the tournament, as well as 3 players rated 600. So it could have worked out if you were around and watching and joining at the right time. Let's see what's going on in our game here. So Queen A4, putting pressure on the bishop. Black defends knight D6. Trades. Attacks the knight, but leaves the bishop hanging. Huge chance for Ugly Yenis. defends the knight on b5 and the bishop gets away. Oof. So we just saw a bishop get spared here, folks. Spared. I think as soon as Adult Improver moved, they noticed with horror the bishop on a6. And when white played bishop d3, they saved it. Now, this pawn on d5 is very weak for white. Seems like earlier in the game, white may have lost this pawn for a knight. Oh, white's up a piece then, huh? What happened? Here, knight takes, attacking the queen. Knight here attacking the opponent's queen. Queen backs off. Queen moves away. And black just leaves the knight here. And it would be safer to trade it so you don't lose it. But that's how black got the extra pawn and then the minus piece. This could have been a second extra piece for white. Black gets a second pawn at least. Okay. That will make the game more complicated for sure. 2 pawns against a piece. Sounds fun. Now, very important will be this is a dangly piece. White's got to keep their eyes on it. Try not to move the bishop away at the wrong moment. White could look at queen d6 here. It doesn't work because black's got the rook backing up the queen. So d6 is defended enough times. And then there is a third pawn hanging over here on b2 that black might be able to pick up. We'll see. Depends where this queen goes. She doesn't have amazing territories available. I guess she could go back to a4, which is where she came from. This move, I guess, was unfortunate, huh? She moves over here and just sets up knight takes pawn attacking her. And now she has to find a new place to go, yeah. That was unfortunate. So Ugly Yanis finds a square. Queen goes over to c4, yeah. Looks reasonable, and black could either grab this pawn, go back to trying to harass this knight with the same thing that we saw once earlier this game, or try a6, knight moves, b5, kind of expanding those queenside pawns. That's an idea as well. Personally, I'd probably just grab a pawn. I don't see anything better than that. Maybe I would trade here first. Yeah, probably I would. Go here, here, and then grab the pawn, and then just head back here. And now, yeah, it's not going to be easy for white to show the advantage of the knight against that many pawns. Nordvik, you like the idea of rook e8 here for black, going to the open file. Fair enough. But knight e3 is quite good. That you get the unopposed dark squared bishop by doing that, and it poses a pretty tricky question to white. You guys saw me taking this way, which is not the most obvious way. Oh, black's played a move. It was a6. Knight c3, queen e6, just letting white start trading pieces here. That's not going to help black. They needed to keep coming at white with something like one of these moves. This move is very trade-oriented. It's not going to work out great for black. Also puts the queen opposite white's rook, right? I mean, potentially, white could have maybe played a move like bishop takes pawn, just attacking the queen and trying to destroy some stuff. Possibly. Or maybe bishop g5, attacking the queen and the rook. So very, very dubious to put the queen here lined up with the rook and the queen. I mean, you don't want white to take your queen. She's very exposed there. White plays the simple knight trade on d5. Something with the bishop might have been even better. Oh, Karmar, hello. Greetings. I'm going to step away for a quick second here. Bishop b2 has just been played. Wait, that means black didn't recapture the knight? This pawn could have been taken for free previously. Black doesn't take it when it's just sitting there. Instead, waits till white's in the middle of trading your pieces and then takes on b2 instead of recapturing. Yeah. You got to recapture, my friend. You've got to recapture. If you don't recapture, then you've got less pieces than your opponent. Yeah. Yes, it's been a long time, Karmar. How have you been? I have to run for 1 second to check on a child's injury, and I'll be back in just a moment. We'll leave this game here running. Stupid knee. All right, so what's the news, Karmar? Help mom clean house? That's a great thing to do, Amy. What a great way to prepare for Mother's Day tomorrow. And by cleaning the house for our moms today. Very nice. Very nice. And you know, you don't have to say sorry for leaving a tournament early or anything like that, because nobody's committed to playing the whole tournament just because they start the tournament, right? This tournament here works perfectly well for people to play as many games as they want and as few games as they want. You can leave whenever, and it doesn't leave other people in the lurch in this kind of an arena. Well, I mean, if you leave mid-game, that could be lame for the person in a game with you, but you know, in these kind of arenas, you could play 1 round, you can play 4 rounds, you can play 2 rounds, you can play 6 rounds. It's totally up to each player how much they want to play. Now, in the game we're watching, after bishop b2, white saved the rook instead of the knight, so black was able to recover the knight. So that actually worked out sort of for black. And then the bishop was able to retreat. And now bishop h6, and black's going for a queen trade. Now, I know a pawn might not seem like a big deal, but this pawn is a bit of a big deal, right? Because if white can take it, it really breaks up black's compensation for the extra knight. That's what you've got against the knight, is you've got 3 pawns. And when white plays rook b6, it splits your group of pawns into 2 groups, reduces the number of pawns you have, and the a pawn becomes kind of weak. So compare the move b5, which black didn't play, to the move queen f6, which black did play. Now, there's also bishop g5 tactically. Oh my god. But if white traded and then played rook b6, do you see how much weaker black's compensation for the knight is here with that rook coming in? So we really do want to even pay attention to our pawns and keep them. And as these advance, they become a stronger and stronger mass that's harder and harder for the knight to beat. But I guess the biggest problem with queen f6 is going to be bishop g5, nailing that queen to her own rook. Oof. That looks a lot like a crucifixion. And Tim Westland saying knight takes b6 would have given white 2 pieces versus rook and 2 pawns. I don't see anything better, but rook b1 was definitely incorrect. Yeah, moving the knight would have been best, and I thought knight b6 also. Tim, that's where I was kind of expecting the knight to go. Oh, white just won by resignation after bishop g5, queen f4, and taking the queen. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. That queen could not get away. And so we get another game popping up. Let's switch sections again. It's like Nordvik's still waiting for a game here. It's a long wait. Oh, there's a game. Oh, it's been going for a few minutes. It just didn't show up properly on my thing. Okay, it's a Queen's Gambit exchange structure where this pawn looks quite weak. Quite weak. I think if you're Nordvik, you'd love to move this pawn back to b7 and have a solid structure, because other than this pawn on c6, everything else about Black's position is fine, right? They've traded 2 minor pieces. They've got enough space. They've got a great dark squared bishop. Should be a fine minor piece for this position. Oh my god! Antum hits us with a tactic as we're talking about positional features. Oops. That hurts. That ends the game, more or less. Rook c2, rook c8, rook's double. Doesn't see knight d5 coming. Oh. You had a tough game, Mumuxia? Tough like fun? There's nothing left to say here, right? Other than Nordovik's last rites. Wait a minute. Nordvik always gets comebacks. We could watch for the Nordvik magic. What is to be done? If you take on d5, sacking the exchange, you not only sack the exchange, but you have to trade your last rook because it's trapped. And then white's got the c file with the queen and the rook. That seems not best. Alternatively, we move the queen somewhere. Like here. Takes, 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 takes. And we just play 2 pawns down. I think that's the best we can do. Much fun in your games too, Lakalos. Yeah. I think we saw one of your games at some point in which you ran out of time. Is that possible? Did you have a game that got decided by running out of time? Okay, queen e6 played. Trades. White grabs the second pawn. Good call. And also it lets the rooks dominate the c file. What to do as black in a situation like this? Yeah, rook c6 Oscar chess is pretty similar because after black goes rook c6, you have to take on e7 with check. You can't play rook c6 a second time because of queen takes d5. So you would get sort of the same position as here. Ça va, Popsy? Tu manges tes pâtes? Tu manges la couverture? Yeah, knight e6, that's what I was thinking. Just improve the piece. If white plays e4, maybe the knight could end up here. If white plays d5, yeah, I guess the knight goes here. All right, so how to improve your calculation and how to think better might be 2 different things, David, right? there's calculating, and then there's like thought process around calculating, right? Thought process around calculating could be like, how many variations should I look at? How much time should I spend on them? When should I give up on a variation and switch to a different variation? When should I be calculating at all versus playing a move on sort of positional instinct? So let's just start with calculation and forget the rest of your how to think better approach, because that gets to be an even bigger question, okay? So how to improve calculation. The first piece of improving calculation is to know a huge number of little patterns that you can just spot quickly when similar things come up, right? Like you might know this pattern, that the pawn can't take the knight because of queen takes queen. Or actually, let's put a real tactic on the board from this exact game. Let's say rook takes c6 gets played, right? In order to calculate this position here as black, the first thing you need to know is or as white, is you need to know that this pattern here exists. You have to have seen this pattern before of like a knight check hitting c6 or c8. That's kind of like a common tactical pattern for a knight on d5. So as soon as white's knight is on d5, we're going to be looking at tricks on c6 because we just know that that's a pattern. You have to know that's a pattern. You can't come into this position and just start calculating every single move. You have to calculate moves that are plausible because they're related to patterns that come up. So in other words, if I look at this position, why am I calculating rook c6 instead of knight takes b6? Imagine how hard it would be to play chess if anytime I got this position, I started calculating knight e5. Just leaving my knight hanging, but knight e5, maybe that's a thing, right? Putting pressure here or bringing a piece forward, right? Or I calculate knight takes b6 every time. Or I'm thinking maybe there's a pattern with queen e4, right? I almost said queen f5, which actually does have a pattern. Insanely, this is a plausible move because this is related to the knight e7 pattern. So if black takes your queen, you have knight e7, knight takes queen. If black takes your knight, you trade queens and then you win the rook on c8, right? So in this position as white, you want the moves queen f5 and rook c6 to be moves that you start calculating, but you don't want to be calculating knight g5 and knight e5 and knight b6 and queen b5 and queen a6, right? There are certain moves you don't want to you can't just suddenly spend your energy calculating 20 different moves. So you need to know a set of patterns that sort of tell you what moves are plausible and which moves to start looking at. Yeah? So that's the first thing you need. And to get that, what you're going to do is you're going to go to puzzles like this. You just go to puzzles and you just start practicing puzzles. And do like 15 minutes a day. Or you can do it in a book. Right? There are lots of chess books out there that essentially look like this one's got a lot of examples in it. Oh no, this is the terrible one. Oops, hang on. I grabbed the wrong one. Where did I put them all? I just had a stack of them the other day. Oh, I moved them all over here. Okay. So basically, you want a book that looks like this. If I'm showing this correctly. Position, 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 and then in the back, there'll be answers, 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 answers. Right? And you just want to do 15 minutes of this every day. 15, maybe 20 minutes. Depends what kind of a schedule you're on. That's the first step. And you have to do that for pretty much until you're 1200 or 13 or 1400, until you feel like you know 2 or 3,000 tactical patterns of this type, of this, rook c6 or queen f5, knight e7, right? You need to know like 3,000 of these kind of patterns. And here, 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 here. Once you know all those patterns, what you'll get to do is start calculating and putting them together, which for now is a little bit getting ahead of ourselves. But ultimately, once you know these patterns, then you know which moves to look at, but then calculating involves looking at some options after you play these moves, right? Like, well, what if they go queen d5? Does this work out, right? What if they go queen f5? You just check after knight e7, knight f5, was their queen defended or is there another piece hanging? You just check that in the final position, there isn't some problem for you, like they take your rook with the pawn. You didn't leave a rook hanging. In this case, I think the very interesting line is after queen f5, they can try pawn takes pawn. And now you have to calculate, if you go rook takes rook with the x-ray, now they can play queen takes queen because you don't have the knight here anymore, right? And if you go queen e6, they have rook c2, not recapturing your queen. And how does your queen stop back rank mate? You see what I mean? You could take this bishop, but you get back rank mated. If you had a pawn on h3, this line might be fine, right? But you don't. And if you recapture, now they recapture, and they're ahead, right? So in this position, the only move for white is queen c6 now, right? Defending the rook like that. And then rook takes, rook takes. So, and I'm going to tell you the third step in a moment. But so this is the second step. You know these patterns. You see the idea of queen f5. Once you know enough of these patterns, the second step is you see the move and now you test it. Queen takes queen, queen takes knight, pawn takes knight. You double check all those moves, right? You might even look at a move like bishop a3 sometimes. Or let's say instead of looking at bishop a3 specifically, you might look, does the bishop have any attacking move it could play? Any tactical move that the bishop could play? Because if the bishop could go make a threat somewhere, that might be really good for black, right? Because it leaves your queen hanging. It threatens to take it because the bishop's not on e7 anymore. And if the queen takes your queen, you could take back with your pawn and the knight's hanging. So your bishop has kind of like a free move to go like attack something. If there were a rook on e1, bishop b4 might be good or something. Imagine this pawn's on a2 and this rook's on e1. You could maybe play bishop b4. And if the knight takes, you can take the queen. And if the rook moves, then you can take the queen as well. And the bishop's covering knight e7. So that's the second step, is like saying, okay, now that I see this pattern, like how do different parts of the pattern play out, right? Does queen f5, knight e7 work or not? Does queen d5 work or not? Does pawn d5, queen e6 work or not? And the last part is to go down those variations and successfully evaluate the positions at the end. In other words, you have to, without moving the pieces, imagine for yourself pawn takes, rook takes, queen here, rook takes, and who is better by how much and why, right? So when I show you this position here, and I play cd5, queen e6, rook c2, just with like arrows or words for you, do you know who has more pieces at the end and by how much? Probably not. It's a pretty advanced skill. But for the 1800, 2000 plus players in chat who are following along with us, the answer is that black's going to be up this dark squared bishop for one pawn. So queen f5 actually is refuted here, despite being pretty cool as a move. Cool enough that I'm going to grab the position for fun and save it as a puzzle. So there's several steps to improving calculation, David, but the first one is just gathering all those patterns so that when you look at a position like this, the moves queen f5, knight e7, and rook c6 should all suggest themselves to you in 0 to 1 second. Within 1 second, these should all be ideas that are floating around in your head. And then you can start calculating them. but you have to know the patterns to know what you're calculating. And let me hit you up with links to 2 videos to get you started. Actually, I'll just give you one to get you started. So here's a longer video on that subject, I think. It should be called How to Learn Tactics 1. So start with that and see where that takes you. Okay, back to Nordovik's game. White wins 2 pawns. Nordovik brings out the knight. White doubles on the c file. Queen d7, coming in contact with the rook. Kicks her back. Now I would think white would play a little move like h3, just getting rid of back rank mate. They play b4, gaining space, stopping knight c5. They could cut off the queen and the rook. Could still come in at some point. f6, kicking the knight. Queen c4. White's crushing. All right, black tries to threaten a back rank mate, and then the pattern is white can block it. So white has time to save the knight here. White can also play queen d3 check first, covering black's back rank, and then save the knight. But white should be able to save this extra knight here and be in really good position for winning this game. We should all do some tactics, Oscar Chess, no matter how good or bad we are, right? But, you know, players rated 600, 800, 1,000 or so, those players need to just pound these kind of short pattern tactics. And you've got mostly different work to do at this point, Oscar Chess, right? Just more difficult calculation work, which we all have forever. Thanks, Lacrylos. Games to memorize, yeah. I haven't finished those yet for all the dojo levels, but I did a bunch of them, and then there are some really hard games that I haven't done yet. The higher cohort games are more and more difficult to properly explain. But, you know, when you say you wish there were more, there's a million hours of my chess videos out there. Right? I mean, surely there are chess videos of mine you haven't seen yet. There's so many. Queen d3 check. Nice move. And Nordovik takes the open file. And here you see why, you know, I would have played a little move like h3 at some point as white. There we go. Entum does it now. I've got videos on chess.com, Lacrylos. I've got videos on YouTube on both my channel and on the Chess Dojo channel. It's a lot of material. Okay. Black challenges this rook. It doesn't have a lot of squares to go to, right? It doesn't have a lot of range of where it can go to try and get away from attack. White could consider anchoring it with the D pawn, maybe? And I suppose one could also consider the move queen e4, bringing the queen towards the rook. Queen e4, maybe even queen f5. It's a little bit risky to build sort of a tactical construction with that rook, but it's possible. You know, d5 is probably the safest move, because now, I mean, you basically can't lose the rook if it's defended by a pawn. Okay, white tries to just find room for the rook. That looks really risky. I mean, if the king keeps chasing you, what are you doing? Is this going to be another Nordovik comeback? That's insane. Once he was down a full knight, I thought there's no longer any Nordovik comeback. I mean, the knight plus already, he was down 2 pawns before, then a full knight. Position pretty simple. Throws the check. Where's white heading? I guess rook d5? But white's down to 2 minutes, and this was like a terrible move. Very awkward, this rook. And white spent almost half their remaining time on it. How's this gonna... So he plays here, the rook can go here. He attacks it. I mean, white still has e4. They should never lose this. I don't know moves. It is called a Nordovik comeback for a reason, partly because it defies when anybody expects it to happen. You know? Folks just don't see it coming. Moves, I don't know what's going on X, by which I assume you mean Twitter. If somebody's ruffling somebody's feathers on Twitter, I mean, my first thought would maybe be Kostya. He seems like somebody who would like write something, would be the most likely to write something kind of, you know, snarky on Twitter, something with like a little bit of attitude, or like a subtle emoji or punctuation mark that somehow means he's slyly dissing you or something. The Chess Dojo account. Ay. Hopefully we don't have like an intern going wild. An unapproved intern drama. Oh my gosh, we have to go in 5 minutes to the ballet. 1 second. Chérie, est-ce que tu es prête pour ballet? Ok, fantastique. J'arrive en 2 minutes, ok? Almost forgot. Roasting Kramnik is good for health. Okay, how do I even find where Kramnik would be? Search. Chess Dojo. We had Kramnik on to our podcast. We were perfectly fine with, civil with him. Oh, now Coast is calling Ponomarev a world champion. Look at, that's what I see on Chess Dojo on Twitter. I see that Coast just changed his tune, and now he's considering Ponomarev a world champion. Okay, maybe I have to look for their replies instead of their posts. Oh, I see there is some kind of a thing. Bedtime reading something from Grok. What does he say? In my opinion, YouTubers with contracts with chess.com likely face some constraints on expressing negative opinions about the platform. That's the opinion of an AI. AIs don't have opinions. Okay. But somebody on Chess Dojo chose to send him a video of ours called Is Chess.com Evil? Kramnik says it was 2 years ago. Anything fresher? Well, why does it need to be fresher? It already disproves your theory. That would be like, could you give an example of a time anywhere in history where somebody moved from one country to another? And you say, yeah, my grandfather moved from Poland to America. And he'd be like, yeah, but that doesn't disprove my point that no one's ever moved. I need a more recent example for it to be an example. We are a partnered streamer. It's not a secret. You can see a list of all chess.com streamers here. Then they provide a more recent negative clip. That's fine. So you have contractual financial relations with chess.com. Therefore, do I understand it right? Yeah. I mean, we don't get any money from them. So to say financial is a little advanced, but we have a very mild contractual relationship with them, yes. But how does it... What is going on? What a severe critics. Well, I can't, I'm not even good enough to use Twitter. It's so confusing. But I think it's probably Kostya answering him. Well, 5 hours ago, Kostya was playing a classical game. I have no idea who's tweeting with Kramnik. Sorry, Moves. I just don't know. Okay. Wow, he's got a pinned tweet about us? That's a lot of publicity. For your information, Chess Dojo and similar YouTubers hiding business relationship might be illegal? Oh my god, he's completely insane. What sadness. What sadness. Why so shy? I think audience must know it, and it's according to laws as well. Chat, did you know that we were a chess.com streamer? Anyone watching here who didn't know that we were a chess.com partnered streamer and that this website here that you're watching this game on is not chess.com? Wow, Nordovic is still fighting the fight. Incredible. Maybe still trapping that poor rook. White's down to 20 seconds. You just can't beat Nordovic. Oh, speaking of which, I have to leave. You distracted me, Moves, with this insanity. Absolute insanity. Oh my god. Wow. No, I didn't know about any of this moves, and normally my first guess was that Kostya would have been the one handling this, but Kostya is playing a classical tournament, and I have no idea who's having this conversation with Kramnik, but they haven't said anything wrong, so credit to them. It's the more you talk with somebody who's completely crazy, the higher chance that you're going to say something dubious or crazy yourself. So whatever intern is doing it, they're doing their job well, I guess. Ish. Insofar as it's even worth talking at all when somebody's being that nasty and aggressive towards you. But I got to get my kid to ballet, folks, so I'm just going to have to wish you all a great day.